Hello and welcome to the Book by Book, a podcast about the odd book or two we've read. I'm your host Scott and I'm not alone. Tobie's here too. This episode we're talking about Blaze by Richard King, Batman Stephen. It's going to be a pretty spoiler heavy episode, so be warned. But if that's okay with you, continue on and I'll see you on the other side.
I've got what is it? One of my Manuka honey and ginger and hibiscus lemon or whatever it is. Something
hey
random,
everyone.
one of those. Yeah.
We're talking about Blaze today, which is a Stephen King / Richard Bachman book.
Yes.
We've talked about it before, but in looking into this book, I'm a bit more confused. We talked about Richard Bachman before.
Oh yeah. Hello, Scott.
I'm a bit more confused about what's going on with the Richard Bachman thing. I feel like over time, his stance has changed on what that was. Because there's times where we talked about like the Dark Half, or maybe I just got confused with the Dark Half in that Richard Bachman. Isn't it weird that it's a name that I say and read separately?
Bachman and Bachman.
Yeah. How do you pronounce it? Because it should
Richard
be Bachman, right?
I've always said.
I'm pretty sure it's like silent letters.
Yeah, Bachman, like Bach.
Right, but I say it like Bachman. I don't think I say it often.
No, Bachman. Sorry.
But so you told me like initially he was just writing too much and his publishers didn't want to just pound out his books. So he was the non de plume, as it were, was for the sake of just getting out more books and more money in an intense period.
Yes, that is correct. Yes, I remember saying that.
It's nothing to do with him writing darker material or bloodier, gorier stuff.
No, it was just an exercise in releasing.
See what I mean? But also, it happened so early on in his career.
No, I think you're getting the two things muddled up. If I remember rightly, there was a period in his career where he was writing loads, and he wanted to get more out, so he went into a different publishers because he wasn't getting number one. If that's right. And then there was a period where Bachman, he just wanted to see whether it was his name that was making things big.
Because I don't understand that these
released under the pseudonym.
But these Bachman books came so early. You're saying he wrote this before Carrie.
Yeah.
The thing I read was that he gave this to his publisher at the same time as Salem's Lot, which was his second novel. So this is where he wanted to know how well he would do while he was still figuring out how well he's even doing after one novel. That's kind of a mess to me.
That's a bit big-headed, isn't it? if you go, but I don't think it is that. I think basically he wrote this before in it says here
76, right?
Manuscript of Blaze was 173 pages long and was written in 1973. He has rewritten the first 100 pages. A lot of it needed editing to make it more timely, since 1973 references were no longer working. He hoped to get it done by the end of the year. So he'd written it as
and this
Stephen
was 2006, this interview you're reading about.
Was it?
Because the book came out in 2007.
Yeah, November 28, 2006, yeah.
He refers to this as a trunk novel, in that his wife literally opened up a trunk and found an old manuscript he'd forgotten about, which again kind of clashes with some of the stuff he says when he says it's been on his mind for X amount of years and he's been working on it. Either way, I don't care too much. Like the whole releasing it under the Bachman thing seems fun for him.
Yeah, I agree.
I guess he says he wrote it initially around that time. A little bit of info that came up, which sort of power of advertising, and like he said when he pulled out Under the Dome, because he referred to that as a trunk novel, it was 60 pages.
What?
And the novel that's been released is probably 1,000.
Yes, it's over 1,000.
Which makes me think, when it came out, I remember it being the forgotten novel, the lost novel, the novel he wrote. Like this one.
Yeah.
It's not quite a novel he wrote in that era.
No.
It's
right,
not
I see what
quite
you mean.
The promise. Sorry, it was a really long-winded way of
saying.
He's acting like here's a novel from the 70s. If you like my 70s stuff,
Yeah,
It's not. It's like an idea from the 70s, but it's
that's
written
been
in the early
reworked.
2000s.
So was it actually written? No, published in when was
2007, I believe.
2007? Right.
Yes,
Okay.
it's not that older book as a release date. And there's
Right.
no cool
Okay.
covers of it. I had a
No.
Google.
So that was the first publishing of it was in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Now that I didn't know. I thought it was released at the time that it was written as part
No,
of the
no, no.
Batchman
He
stuff.
said that
Now that
took
is weird, isn't it?
he took this book, the manuscript, the very short manuscript, and Salem Slot, his publisher. His publisher said Salem Slot's better, so we just chucked this in the trunk and forgot about it.
Right.
I was looking at some Goodreads reviews, and someone was like, Stephen King's name is bigger than the actual writer's name, and he only wrote the intro. Oh.
Has your edition got a short story in the back
Let me have
called Memory?
Yes.
Have you read that?
I don't remember. So I read this like a year ago or so.
Okay.
And then this week I listened to the audiobook. I listened to like
nice.
60% of the audiobook. I sort
Yeah.
of ran out of time. I don't remember if I have memory, but I believe it's either the intro or the short story that will go on to be Doomakey.
Yes, that's
And
correct.
I've read Doomakey.
Yeah, I haven't.
Put it really low.
Yeah, I know.
Really
I remember you say you weren't a massive fan of it. That's probably why I haven't read it yet.
No, don't blame it on me. Blaze. Anyway, geesh, that's a long intro to say here's a book he wrote in the 70s that was released in 2006.
Yeah.
Did you know what to expect from Blaze? Did you know much of it?
No, I didn't know anything about it. I came into it blind.
It's
but I blazed through it.
Well, hey, that's the name of the book. There's a punch.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Until Thursday.
Get into this.
Mm.
So you literally finished just like 10 minutes ago.
Yes.
Cool. Because the last few chapters is the bit I missed recently. So that's
right. Well, that's good.
So you have to answer every question perfectly. So we open with Clayton Blaisdell Jr., aka Blaze, the title character of the book.
Well remembered. Clayton Blaisdell.
I got the book in my hand and it's written on the blurb book. And it's cold. He's talking about his fingers freezing. Like he's basically trying to pick the lock of a car. And he's got the voice of someone in his ear who is George. Prepare for some heavy comparisons. But I mean, there's not in a subtle way, in a very purposeful way of Mice and Men. And you'll understand why in a bit.
Yeah, I haven't read Mice and Men, so not really.
I mean, depending on whether you like this or not, you're flipping love it.
Right, okay.
So Blaze is trying to break into this car and it's cold as hell, and he doesn't know, like, he's got to take off his gloves to do the work, but he keeps kind of putting them on, and he's got this voice of George just over his shoulder going, come on, you dummy, like, you got to do it quicker. Hey, that's the wrong car. That car's too extravagant. You gotta pick a car.
George deserts him at one point, doesn't he, in this exercise in car robbery, and goes into a bar. They're talking, and then he goes into a bar, and once he's hijacked the car, and he contemplates whether he should pick him up or stop and wait for him, and all of that sort of thing. And then it's obviously the reveal that it's not actually a real person. It doesn't open with this is a voice in his head for the first like 10 pages or so, or maybe 3-4 pages.
I think just this chapter ends with that.
So basically he's George passed away. George resides as a voice in his head, Blaze's head, giving him moral advice, or not moral advice.
We find out George died 3 months ago, but sort of remains in Blaze's head, like a voice in his head, and sort of always in the back seat or in the next room. I don't think he ever sort of envisions him. It's just like this whole early chapter, we just think he's over his shoulder, and throughout the book we're going to see like the voice came from the bathroom, or like the voice comes from the next room, but they're more partners in crime, low-level convicts. I can see why he called him his best friend, but the book will sort of unravel that title of
but he obviously isn't a good influence on him in any way, shape or form, but pretty much everybody else is a non-event. It's kind of
Blaze's only companion at this stage.
Yeah, exactly.
We kind of early learn that Blaze is mentally retarded. And he has big trouble with just simple stuff. I think the early example is like your left hand, the one you pick your nose with, and he has to sort of not dumb stuff down, but strip it down, and he just forgets a lot of stuff, and is very simple.
That's exactly it. And it's quite early on that we find this out, isn't it? It's about right in the story where we are now. Yeah, the reason for this learning impediment is that his father, basically, who was an alcoholic. I don't know. I can't remember what happened to his mother. His mother passed away quite early on, didn't she? Or she left. I think she died from cancer or something. But yeah, so she's no longer in the family unit, and it's just his father who is very drunk and abusive, to the point where when he was a toddler, he throws Blaze down a flight of stairs and then goes down to the bottom of the flight of stairs, picks him up, carries him back to the top again, and throws him down again, and then repeats that process 3 times in subsequent. And that was quite harrowing, actually, to read. It was quite well done.
Definitely. We
get horrible sequence. He wasn't born with these impediments.
I don't know how old he was, but they sort of say he was bright, like he could read, and he was basically like a bright kid. Just I don't think he was top of the class, but he was high in his class. I think they go their way to say. And he said the doctor in charge of this case voiced the opinion that he would remain so until he died, a human carrot. But the boy woke up. He was unfortunately soft in the head. His days of carrying books under his arm were over. And then just a few pages, like a paragraph down, basically the authorities just strip him from the father, like put him into a home because they sort of learn of the abuse. And it says his father did some protesting in the Freeport police station and in several more Freeport bars. He threatened to go to the law in order to regain his son, but never did. He claimed to love Clay, and perhaps he did, a little. But if so, his love was the kind that bites and burns. The boy was better off out of his reach. We get so many nice little moments like that. And I hope they're from the original stuff, because I was confused when I read the same thing as you. I think I misread it, that although he rewrote the first 170 pages, it was more the add-on, because the book is twice that length. And I'm guessing the flashbacks, but I feel like, I've read quite a few of his recent ones. That kind of writing feels a bit bleached out these days. And it feels like the first half of the book has a really nice style to it. Whatever you think.
There's some peppered throughout all those
nice paragraphs. Blaze sort of lets on when George says, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do, you dummy?" He says, "I'm going to go ahead with the plan. We're going to kidnap the kid." And we're like, "Whoa, this is big crime."
And this
so,
is level up shit.
And like you said, all the way through this book, each other chapter, as it were, is like a flashback.
Yes, and I really liked this style. At first, I wasn't too sure on it, but the flip-flopping between the present and the past continuously was really nice, and the way it all came together was clever.
We just get this idea, which is this view of this, like Blaze is described as big. I think, oh man, there's so many nice paragraphs. It was like there's a bit when he's in school, and it says like the little kids were drawn to him. Anyone with a Saint Bernard will understand the feeling of that.
There's another point about his impediment, his learning impediment, and there's a physical side to that that abuse, was the concavement in his skull. It's a big feature of him throughout the book, isn't it? That, like, people that come in contact with him refer him to him as the giant with the sunken head.
He's very visually striking and hard to forget, which I mean, being that this is like a crime novel, is going to have some stuff to play in it. What do you make of George in his ear?
I thought it was nice. It was interesting in the sense that it was almost like he was struggling with an inner voice rather than George being an actual person that was in his head, like a spirit. It was like George was like a moral battle that was going on inside his head about. There was Blaze, and then there was George, who was telling him how to do things and what to do, and redirecting him when Blaze was trying to would go off on a direction that was possibly better for him overall. George would steer him back in.
Because I guess I love how it's how Blaze gets around in the world at this stage, because we can get to the end. There's little tiny hints about George being a ghost and a psychic connection, but I didn't really buy that. I didn't like that. That feels like one of the rewrite things he chucked in after. But so basically Blaze has all the information, and he has the knowledge, right? Because if George is the voice in his head, every time he says, "Don't forget this," It's like it's his own memory saying, "Hey, you've got to remember this thing,"
Yeah,
and he can't process it.
It's like the remnants of the previous George before he was thrown down the stairs. The bright spark, the clever guy, the one that did know what
Some
to do,
intelligence.
would have gotten through life and probably excelled really well. It's like that part of him still exists, but it is warped.
George turns out not to be such a nice guy. It's quite a toxic friendship. He's quite belittling. He really kind of, I don't know, they do get on, but it's more of a sense that he needs, like, he uses Blaze, and like he would kind of ditch him in a heartbeat if he had to. But like being in the small crimes world, that Blaze is physically big, he's kind of handy to have around.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess whether he would ditch him or not. I guess he would, because the thing with the flashbacks is we don't spend an awful lot of time with George in them. We meet a lot of other characters, and it's only towards the last couple of chapters that we were introduced to the real life George, and they kind of it doesn't really explore that dynamic very much in the flashbacks. I don't think.
Do you not feel like you get enough from the way he speaks to Blaze, and just the way he is?
Yeah, I guess, but it's not as I don't know whether I necessarily agree that George would just ditch him, because he says those things to him when he's in jail, and when he goes to jail, wait for me, don't get caught up in all these other people, don't go with these other small crime groups, don't listen to them, follow your own self, wait till I come out. And that's actually quite good advice.
Right, but is it not quite self-serving? Because it's just...
yeah, totally, it is self-serving. Yeah, no, it is. He is out. George is out for himself, but I don't necessarily think he would.
Are you really caught up on me saying he would ditch him?
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, okay, but he wasn't good for him. Do you know what I mean?
No, he definitely wasn't good for him.
He might not leave him, but he sort of should have. And that's...
I'm trying to think, would George throw him in front of a bullet to save himself?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
So again, I sort of pinned another one out here. Where was it? George was like the fox that couldn't reach the grapes and told everyone they were sour. Man, that really sums him up as well.
Yeah. So yeah, okay, I'll go with you. You're right. George is a knob.
But I mean, it's funny, like, because you said at the beginning he wanted to rewrite it to drop some of its 70s, I don't know, lingo. But I kind of want to go back and check that out. Like, one of my favorite things in Scanner Darkly is the rhythm of the time. It's like, oh, hey, man, and oh, dude, don't be square.
Yeah,
and it does feel weird, but I just really like that. Like, he was writing from his time, and okay, you can say like it dates it as a mild futuristic sci-fi dystopian book, but this doesn't feel timeless. This certainly has an 80s 90s feel to it.
Yeah.
I guess you can't really write something timeless anymore because of the way technology moves. You either have to stay, the way they rob cars, siphon gas, the way that they can grift their way around America at times. Yeah. For me, it does give it quite a time and a place setting.
Yeah, definitely. The fact they use payphones,
right,
that sort of thing, that just doesn't exist anymore. Payphones.
Yeah, Blaze sort of has no idea how to kidnap this little kid.
Yeah, pull off this huge crime of the century.
And this is where George's ear, not that he's helpful, but he's giving him like physical advice in like, okay, what are you going to feed the baby? So he basically says like, you got to rob a small mom and pop store because you need a couple $100 to sort of buy baby stuff, formula, diapers and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I guess the reason why the whole kid snatching thing plays back to that was George's plan. Sort of read about, or he worked for someone with these rich people.
It was when he was in jail. It was when he was in jail. There was a guy that told him that the big score is in kidnapping. Take a rich person's kid, and they will pay you anything, and they won't get the police involved.
Because it's like a baby. There's no identification. Like you don't have to worry about whacking him if it goes south or something. You can just leave it and run, and be all right. Yeah, so Blaze is like, it's like, yo, put a stocking on your head. Hey, take the bullets out the gun. I just little bits like that I really love. I guess that's the stuff you were saying. George doesn't necessarily always mean him harm. Like, he doesn't want him to be a mess.
No.
At least we're gonna have to negate the fact that this is Blaze's version of George.
Yeah. It's an interesting one.
We can't keep
isn't
coming
it?
back to that, but we'll just say that now. Just always keep in mind that, apart from the flashbacks when we're physically with George, this is Blaze's idea of George.
Yeah.
But I love that little detail. Hey, Blaze, take the bullets out the gun. You cannot be trusted. He was like, I think he said, make sure it doesn't make past page 3 news. Like, keep it small time. Bash him if you got to, but certainly don't kill anyone.
Yeah.
And I guess it's statements like that sort of remind us that, because Blaze is is he lovable? I'm going to say Blaze is lovable.
Yeah, Blaze is lovable, definitely.
But he's dangerous.
He's like a perfectly put daft Saint Bernard.
But
he's clumsy.
But he is and can be dangerous.
Yeah, he doesn't. He has no perception of his own strength, really, and his anger. When his anger snaps, necks invariably snap.
But yeah, like he's not scared to rob up a place and whack someone on the head with a bar or what have you.
The thing, what I found really funny was like, you've got George who will say, give him that advice, take the bullets out of the gun and make sure it doesn't make page 3. Yet Blaze will go and rob the same place twice in the space of 2 weeks.
And I think he can do this sometimes, King, and sometimes it turns on a dime whether I think, oh, that feels cheap, or wow, that is beautiful. So he goes into the store and he sort of robs it, and it's kind of like low stakes, high tension. Like I said, we're really rooting for Blaze. It's a very conflicting, even though we know it's to rob a kid, and like, this guy should not be near infant babies. That is disaster. This whole book is almost a meditation on like, if you're born with bad luck. And we'll get into like societal, society was against him all the way, but like, so the robbery plays out and it's fine, and he bashes him, and everything's the plan. And then the last line is like, Blaze didn't realize till 2 hours later he wasn't wearing his mask.
Yeah, that's it.
And it's like, oh no, it was sort of all for nothing. And like you said, he's got a very distinctive face. Like, he's just, I don't know, he can use that sort of punchline, as it were, just in the right place with the right soft tone.
Yeah.
Just like, you're kind of proud of Blaze for robbing up the store and not really hurting anyone, going right. And then you're like, oh, I'm on George's side. Goddamn idiot.
Yeah. He does that several times throughout this.
Yeah, actually. This book is laden with like, we're gonna tell you some of the facts after the point to give it more punch, which I think totally works. He's sort of going in and like, he goes into like a sort of I don't know, what's like a baby shop, or what's the term?
Yeah, it's like a mall. It's like a massive mall basically, but it has a baby section in it. This is how I envisioned it. And he talks to the store clerk and is basically like, hey, I want to buy baby stuff for my nephew or something who just had a kid, or but I don't really have a clue, but I have money, can you help me? And she kind of takes a soft spot to him, doesn't she?
I guess he just seems sweet. Every other chapter at this point is sort of like what happened to Blaze when he was taken into care. And I guess you don't have to go into loads of detail because it's a lifetime. It's not a particularly long book. In fact, it's pretty short, I thought.
I read it very quickly.
But he's sort of he's in and out of just care homes. He sort of has his first dash with bullies, and he's quite big, so he can make the right friends.
Yeah,
I guess in our time we build to the kidnapping.
Yeah, so when George was alive, they scoped this apartment gated community area, and there is a couple, the Gerards, is it? And Gerard the Fourth is the name of the son, or the baby that he's going to kidnap, and they know this family is worth an awful lot of money. So Blaze rocks up in his car, parks sort of like a block away, takes a big ladder, which to me was really funny, and carries it over. I guess
it was one of those things, like, because George was like, I don't know if you should be doing this. So there's a beautiful line where George was like, I think it would be best if you got caught before you get near that baby. But he's just really proud of this ladder. Like, to him, it's like, hey, I've got a plan. I know what I'm doing. I've got a ladder.
Yeah. It's just so funny. And he's carrying this thing. It's snowing at this point, isn't it? So he's stomping through the snow and carrying this ladder over fences and across roads and all the way to this manor house apartment block sort of thing. But the thing is, when he's driving in, there's a security guard on the gate, registers him, but I think he recognized him because he has a pass from when they did the scope. They got in and they were doing a sort of I don't know what you would call it, like that's it. That's electricians. Thank you. So he still has the pass for that, and so the security guard lets him in. It's about 10, so it's quite late. But the security guard's blasé and in his own world, smoking his cigarettes and reading his book or whatever. So he just waves him through. Yeah, and then he carries his ladder and he puts it up against a window. And for this bit, for me, was terrifying. Because, like you say, we're on Blaze's side. For some reason, I was still rooting for him to break into this house, get this kid out safely, and get back home with it. But I just don't understand, and I can't fathom why he breaks into the parents' bedroom and goes in through their window while they're asleep in the room.
He just needs an unlocked window.
Because
one of the things was there's a window on like the second floor that isn't locked. That was sort of the plan because they didn't have to set alarms.
Okay.
Either it's just the only window to go through there, or he just kind of gets the wrong window and just Blaze.
He's up there by Blaze. But yeah, so that to me was very good. It was cracking. Having to push this window open, and the wind and the snow blowing outside, and the temperature drops, and the possible as the window went up, and the climbing in, and the putting the foot on the floor, and it not creaking.
Do you think you could
nobody waking up
that heavy at 10?
No, I was on the edge of my seat reading it. I was just like, what the fuck are you doing? But somehow this giant of a man successfully breaks into this house via the parents' bedroom, gets through the parents' bedroom and out. Doesn't he have a moment of titillation
when he's standing over the couple asleep? He just finds it powerful.
Yes,
and just at one point he describes himself as getting hard. It spike out as weird. He didn't, because
her nightgown is slightly to the side across.
Wasn't she like an old lady?
No, that was.
Am I mixed up? Isn't it like the grandparents who were looking after it? I thought the kid was neglected, or the parents were always away. That's why this kid was such a hot one, because it's rich parents, but who are always away, and they live with like the old grandparents. Have I totally made that up?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
For me, it's the actual family are in the house. The mother and the father are in the house when he breaks in, but the grandmother is also in the house.
Okay.
She's going after a cat.
Yeah, she's up and walking around the house.
So basically, he gets through the bedroom, walks down the corridors, checks a few rooms. There's a few people sleeping in different rooms, and none of them wake up. Finds the baby's room, who is also sleeping, and he manages to get this baby up and bundles it up, and then heads back. And on the way back, he hears somebody call him, and I think at first he thinks it's George, but it's not. It's somebody calling the name of the cat.
I think, does the grandma not hear him, but she thinks he's the cat? So she's creeping around after him, thinking that he's the cat.
Exactly. He's stuck in the house, heading down the stairs with the baby in tow. And while he's in the kitchen trying to find a way out, or out through one of the windows, the grandmother comes in.
He sort of gets cornered.
Yeah, he gets cornered. He just basically lamps her.
Yeah.
Rather successfully.
To
with so much force. Like, again, it goes back to what I was saying. He doesn't realise his own brute strength, and he puts all of it behind his fist, and just snaps her neck in essence with
just
one
kills
punch.
her, right? Like she's an old lady, and he's like a giant hunking man, and he accidentally, purposefully.
Yeah, but no, there's still, again, nobody seems to wake up, and it's very much plays into this. He seems to have, although his life is laden with bad luck, it is also straddled with moments of pure coincidence that play out as good luck. Well, there's a whole.
I don't know, because he killed the lady. No, is this not like
exactly? Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't get caught. He's got, I don't know if the wits about him are right, but he's. I mean, to cut a long story short, he kidnaps the baby and kills the grandma.
Yeah. So once he's out of the house, he starts to. He's got the baby, and he runs for the car, grabs his ladder and chucks his ladder over the fence, and while escaping, he manages to cut himself on one of the barbed wire fences, leaves a piece of clothing behind that's torn off. And it's just small little incidences that he doesn't think of that will come back later on to bite him in the. So yeah, he gets back to the car, puts baby in the car.
What's the name of the baby?
Joe.
Joe, yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. And pegs it basically. Drives back to his house and let the crime commence.
Sort of, we hit the middle of the book where it's sort of Blaze just trying to figure out what to do with this baby, and like George's always in his ear. There's stuff like, you know, he's giving the baby like pure concentrated milk. It's like, George, you dummy, you didn't read it. You got to dilute it with water or something. So again, it's stuff he knows that he should do, but he has to sort of remind himself to remember through George. Like, this is where I guess he's already killed an old lady, but there's the darker moments where, because Blaze will often like set table for two. Like he because he hears George and he's not so smart, he forgets George isn't alive. And there's moments where he's like, I got to go out, you know, I got to change the license plate for the car, and he just leaves, and the baby's crying. It's like, George, look after Joe.
You take care of him.
George didn't respond. You know what I mean? Those are the most haunting moments of the book, I suppose.
Because he'll disappear for like a couple of hours and then come back, and this kid is just screaming.
Like rolled onto the floor crying, left and it's cold out there, like we said, right? Like he had to take his gloves off for 10 minutes and his fingers were freezing and stuff. So it's pretty dangerous. Like, he's living in the sort of, I don't know, some sort of abandoned shack, hideout house, apartment. And again, so do you remember his childhood friend's name?
John Spiegelman.
Because that was
the
happiest moment of the book.
Yep.
In his flashbacks, he kind of hits. We sort of go.
He ends up in
experiences of like his first job, good experiences, bad experiences, meeting this kid called John, who he would become sort of a genuine
in a place called
with.
Henton House.
They even, orphanage. I think, at one point get a job on a farm.
Yep.
Which is just another sort of throwback to.
It was a really nice. That's a really nice section, actually, the farm section, where he's part of a team of boys, and there's a team of girls that go to this farm for an extended period of time, like 2 or 3 weeks, from their respective orphanages, and work the land for this well-to-do, well-meaning landowner. So yeah, Blaze goes to one of these farms and works the land with this other group of children, and the owner of the land takes a shine to Blaze, and it's definitely the happiest moment in the book for Blaze, because this guy properly sees something in Blaze that was originally there before he was thrown down the stairs, and gives him responsibility. He teaches him how to drive the car, and you know, puts him in a role that is above all the others.
Kind of
the others are picking through
for him, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And then when it comes to the end of the stint, he offers Blaze a full-time job. Would you like to stay on? And you can tell that this guy really likes Blaze as well, because he's quite clumsy with the way he says it and everything. And he's like, would you like to stay on? Yeah. And Blaze is just like taken aback, because he thought he was going to get into trouble for sleeping with this girl down by a well where they go and collect water every day. And he accepts. And then the next day, when they're doing the final rounds, the guy has a heart attack while getting into the van and basically dies. While Blaze is trying to get this truck back to the house, and all the kids are bundled back in their respected carriages and sent back to the orphanages, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, it's like,
really sad.
Even before then, because we know how Blaze is going to grow up and this life of petty crime, it's quite heartbreaking, huh? Like, they had these moments.
He was that close.
Arguably.
So yeah, that's where they met. That's where he met John, I believe. Then you've got that small bit about the adventure to New York.
Yeah, they sort of. I mean, they do get into like petty crime, I guess, at that young age, but it feels quite playful because they're so young.
Yeah.
And not necessarily victimless crime, but like just pickpocketing and stuff. And I think they find a wallet and get some reward money, so they sort of take a trip to Chicago. I don't know, just seeing it through their eyes. I guess the beauty of Blaze is like even in the latter stuff, like he's sort of the eyes of a child who are experiencing everything quite innocently.
Yeah.
But I don't know, they just sort of have this, the first time they've really left their area to an extent. and they're in like Chicago, and like, let's go see a baseball game. Let's get a steak, and they sort of meet this barman who's just, I guess that's the first streetwise person they've met.
Yes, yeah.
Because I think they instantly run into this cop who's like, "You two young kids shouldn't have money to sort of buy a steak that big," and the barman kind of takes them under their wing just for like this evening, and they sort of tell them the story. We earned this money, whether we stole it or not.
Yeah.
We earned it.
Yeah, he can see through the lies that they're trying, the web that they're trying to spin straight away. And he's like, "You see that guy down the end of the bar? That's a copper. You guys should not have enough money to buy this size steak. If I wanted to, I could tell him, but I like you, so the steak's on me."
Right. And he sort of gives him, you know what I mean? He's like, split your money, put half your money in your shoe right now, because you're clearly just two kids out of your element with a bundle of cash.
But I get
and it pays off, right? Literally the next page, it's like Blaze was pickpocketed by the time he got off the station, but luckily he'd followed the barman's review idea to put the money in the thing. Here's another one that sort of brought genuinely was moving to me. I think it was I didn't really put the I think it's when he's driving to Chicago or back with his friend. No one talked. Watching the road unroll before the headlights, Blaze thought, "I'm going somewhere." Then he thought, "I am somewhere." The first thought made him happy. The second was so big, it made him feel like crying.
Yes, that was wicked, that moment.
Stuff like that was just
that
like,
proper made me go, whoa. Well up.
And there's a good handful.
So big it made him cry. Yeah, that was for me as well, probably the one of the standout moments where I just remember thinking, oof, that was good. That was really emotionally charged. That single sentence. The first was this, but the second made him cry. It was like, oi, oi, oi.
And I don't know, it's just kind of heartbreaking, that split with Blaze trying to like, come up with this plan to get $1 million for this kid. He's sort of in the modern days trying to write this ransom note. There's this sort of incident where like he's on the radio, another kid as a joke, or someone just like a chancer says, "I got the kid, give me the money," and he gets caught. A lot of interference, which Blaze just doesn't really know how to handle at times. And then that's when we start getting cutaways, which I'm not too big a fan of like the cops. Basically, they start closing in on him.
Yeah, the web, the net.
Like we find out that they have details they're holding from the press. So they sort of conjoin the robbery and him buying all the stuff from the baby store and the kidnapping. They said
because they have the
profile him.
That's it. Yeah.
Really easy, and he's got like now they know he's got a bandaged hand, even though I think that's the news that doesn't leak. I guess Blaze just thinks it's all going well. I think his plan is like chuck $1 million out of a plane window into this field.
Yeah,
which is kind of a smart idea, but when you say it, it's like it's ludicrous. You know what I mean?
Well, that's his overriding plan, is to get to somewhere where they can low fly a plane and drop this money out, and he can grab it, and then I think just leg it and give them the baby, or tell where the baby is and leg it.
But he's kind of quite sweet with the baby, Blaze.
And this whole time he's growing to love and understand the nuances of being a father, understanding the rhythm of having a child, and when they want what the different sounds they make, why the different pitches in the crying and stuff like that. So if it's whether it needs its nappy change, whether it's hungry, whether it's tired, he picks up those nuances really quickly. Again, it points to the intelligent side of Blaze that was beat out of him by his father. And he has decided that he's going to move from the house because George has told him that the net's closing. They're coming to get you. He doesn't understand, but Blaze knows that there's certain facets that went wrong that he hasn't clocked, but in the back of his mind, he knows that they exist, like the cut, the blood, the guy in the security thing. So he just knows the right thing to do now is to leg it with the kid, go somewhere else. And he heads towards the orphanage where all the flashbacks have been happening, Henton House. And the whole time, the police are getting closer and closer and closer. He puts George in the basket and leaves the house to make a phone call because he needs to follow up on the ransom note that he'd posted out earlier on. That he'd
right. He gets in contact with the parents.
With the parents. He then treks by foot 3 and a bit miles through 6 foot deep snow plows, drifts and everything, to this cell phone that's straddling the side of a motel or something, like a petrol station, and makes the call from there, which again, the police already know who is taking it. They've worked out who it is. It's this
We're just trying
Blaze
to
guy,
find him now.
and they've gone back through his history, and they know that he was at an orphanage and all of this. So once they get this phone call and they receive this phone call and they can track this phone call, so then they start to move in on Henton House. Blaze heads back to Henton House. There is a period where George is, you need to kill the kid. But I think this comes earlier on.
Oh, okay. I thought it was
where he puts the pillow.
He
puts a pillow over Joe's head and starts to suffocate him. But Blaze just feels wrong about the whole experience and stops. He bundles George up and heads out into the wilderness with Joe very close to his chest, so close and so tight that the baby starts to not be able to breathe.
Just packs him in too tight. Try and keep him warm.
Exactly. But he gets to a cave, gives him
this
some
is where
food,
it got
makes him
blurry
to
for
sleep.
me. I didn't really. Was you following, and were you like invested in all this stuff?
Yeah. It's a climax, isn't it? So.
No, I'm not invested in like what was going to happen, but it just, I don't know. At this stage, for me, I was like, we're still cutting in with the flashbacks at this stage. I think
This is when we get to meet of George properly, isn't it?
His flashbacks literally go right up to 3 months to George's death, which is 3 months before the story starts. So it's like this book in chronological is kind of his whole life in snippets with a crime ending.
Yes. What happens? So George is killed by a craps game that goes wrong, isn't it?
He's just like because they're all sort of criminals and sort of down and outers. I think just a card game that sort of goes bad.
I think he wins 7 hands in a row and then wins the 8th, and the guy's like, "You're cheating," and stabs him. And Blaze obviously wallops him and kills him outright with one punch. So Blaze has got Joe in a cave and then heads back to Henton House to grab the rest of the stuff that he left behind. So the baby food, the cradle, the clothes and everything. Grabs all of that stuff, and then on the way back, the police move in on the
basically
house.
In between the cave and the house.
While on the way to the house, one of the police officers falls in a trench and breaks his leg, and the other police leave him behind because they're like, "Well, just stay here. We'll call for someone to come and help you, but we need to get to the house." And that just happens to be the copper that sees Blaze heading into the cave where he stashed the baby, having come back from the house with all the stuff. This copper that's broken his leg and is laying in the road sort of crawls towards the cave and then fires a bullet into the cave, and it ricochets around in the cave and causes a small rock to fall.
Shrapnel.
To fall from the cave, and it hits Joe on the face, cutting quite severely into his cheek. And Joe's already quite ill by this point. He's developed pneumonia.
He's fevering up of some kind.
His breathing is rather laboured. This enrages Blaze in such a way that he bursts from the cave and just charges this copper, who fires off 2 bullets, one that grazes Blaze on the hip and one that just into the tree or the snow behind him. By that time, Blaze is on top of him and just kills him outright.
Bare hands again.
Blaze grabs Joe from the cave and just starts to run.
He kind of just panics, no? He sort of just runs off into like, where are you going, Joe?
Well, he kind of has. He does have a plan in the sense that he's going to the road, the logging road, the entrance to the orphanage, in the hope that when he gets there, all of the police cruisers will be parked up and empty, but with their keys still in the thing, so that he can jump in and drive away. And again, he's holding him quite tight, so Joe's breathing is laboured. He's put this cap over his face to keep the cold out of him, and he's just through the trees, through the shrubbery, up embankments, down hills, through massive snow drifts, into small sort of swampy areas that are frozen over, and the ice cracks, and he falls and he trips, and Joe's breathing gets more laboured. The cops get closer and closer and closer, to the point where he climbs up an embankment, up onto the top of the logging road, and sees the police cruisers. And he gets to the first one, and there's keys in the ignition. Yeah, well, this is. We'll get
It's
to the
not that you're not
climax.
right. I just feel like I remember it being like 4 or 5 pages, and you made it sound
Yeah.
like another 30 epic pages.
No, this well, they get up and all that, and then so he realizes he's not going to get away, so he tries to run again, grabs Joe, keeps running. The copper comes up out of the embankment, fires off a couple of shots. One hits his hip, but he keeps running. The other one hits his other leg in the back of his kneecap and explodes his knee out. But he keeps running. He fires off another shot which goes through his midriff and splits his intestines, but he keeps running. And then the final shot goes through and severs his spine. And this whole time, George is in the distance calling to him, saying, "You've almost made it. Keep running, big guy. You've almost made it. We're going to get out of here. Just this is how we roll. Just show them how we roll." And then he finally falls, drops Joe into the distance, like on the road in front of him, and crawls towards him, screaming the kid's name, reaches out his hand, and Joe grabs his pink like a baby does when you hold out the fingers. And then the copper walks up and puts a bullet in his head and ends it.
Was it
that's the end of the climax.
you read it really excited? You just told that really energetically and excitedly. Is that how you took it in?
A little bit.
I feel like you did a better job than the book. Like you made it feel very high tension and high stakes.
Yeah.
Right. For me, I did. It was a very quiet ending for me.
Yes. Yeah. It was quick. It was over a lot quicker than I thought it was going to be. When I was reading it, it was like you're getting to the very last chapter, and the last chapter is like 5 pages long, and then there's a 2-page chapter after that. And at that point, all of that happens that I just explained in 5 pages. I don't know. Maybe I did it. I picked it up too much.
Well, I mean, if you got that from it, that's very cool.
And the snow kept falling.
I guess it didn't, like, I wasn't taken in the adrenaline of the situation. It was
I don't think it was written very adrenalistically, if that's even a word, but that's how it played out.
And then we get a sort of wrap up. He does his I don't like it, but he did it a lot back then. Like, just cut to like a newspaper or an interview or something to just sum up the last of events. And then one of like a very final closing ending for me was you get like a POV from the baby.
Yeah.
And it just talks about, he was sad, and then he sees a face he recognized, and then that face went away, and he was sad, but also quickly, like, he forgot that face even existed, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't pick up on that, but this is what people are saying is one of a handful of hints that George was a ghost. A face bent over him, and a voice began cooing. It was the wrong face, and he began to cry louder. The face pursed its mouth and blew on the bird. The birds began to fly. Joe stopped crying. He watched the birds made him laugh. Like, people are reading into that, like, what's the wrong face? Like the ghost of George. Which, I mean, it very may well be is intended, like we've had this with some of his other books. Cujo, when they're all a bit connected.
Yeah, okay.
I feel like they needed to be.
Do you know what? I totally missed that line. It was the wrong face. Completely missed that.
I mean, I do feel like this is one of the issues with sort of reviewing the book. Didn't you finish it 10 minutes ago?
Yeah.
Like
that's completely right. Yeah, no, I think they're completely right. That does make total sense that they brought the.
Well, certainly a nod to it. I mean, I don't really like that.
No, I don't like that at all, because I didn't see that until you pointed it out.
I think there's a bunch of other ones. That's just the example some people are using.
That's interesting.
What did you dig the book? What did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. It was a nice, easy read. I think it wasn't anywhere near as, because it says in the blurb, Stephen King's Dark Half saved the best for last. I expected it to be really brutal, but it wasn't. It wasn't at all. It's quite a gentle.
It's like a soft. I think someone described it as like a soft crime novel.
Yeah, exactly that. That's
which exactly is fine. You know, I mean, like I would put this right next to. We haven't reviewed it yet, but Dolores Claiborne is very similar.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Just in its execution, there. Not to say there aren't very dark things happening, but it's not a horror book.
No, definitely not.
Even Dolores Claiborne is like a sort of thriller drama.
It didn't grab me in the way that like Stephen King stuff does at times. I did finish it very quickly. I kept reading it, kept going back to it. I just really liked the character of Blaze. I thought Blaze was a very good well-rounded, well-realized character. I enjoyed following him through his tumultuous life. I thought the flashback stuff was really good.
I loved it to the first half of this book. I don't know if that's a case of that's kind of the stuff he wrote in the 70s, and now this is not filler stuff. In the second half, it was like, yo, let's focus on the crime. It sort of became secondary to me, and it felt like it was mussing up the pacing for me.
Right, yeah, okay, I can understand that. What it did get quite heavy on the flashbacks towards the close to the end you got.
And although they do sort of explain how he met George and what happened to George, it's without it, 100% without it, I'd have got the same. But I wouldn't be going, how did he meet George? What happened to George? Like it would have been okay for me to not know how he met George or what happened to George. Like it was okay to know that we got the sense all through Blaze's imagination of George, who and what he was to him, and how their life was.
So for me, I feel that was exactly the reason why the stuff with George was so short. It wasn't massively with the real life stuff. Like George's flashback was a very small chapter. All the other flashbacks were much more denser and fleshed out.
I absolutely adore half of this book, and then I kind of felt like I was waiting for it to wrap most the second half. If I'm honest, it was like being such a fan of Mice and Men and knowing what this is. I don't think pastiche is the word. What did you early on? What did you think was going on with Blaze at the end of the book? Like, was he going to make it out? Was this going to be a success?
No, when we were getting towards once we got to Henton House, I knew what he was only going. He would have to die. For me, it was whether he would die and the baby would die as well. I did think that was going to happen.
When they were on the ice.
Yeah, I thought that was going to happen. I thought Blaze's paternal care would be too much in the same way that his brute strength was too much. And every time he lashed out, he killed someone.
Yeah, again, another, Lenny and the rabbits. The parallels of that, it's like two guys during the Great Depression, Lenny and George. And Lenny is like a nice version of Blaze. He's like sort of huge hulking guy, but like very unbright and mentally retarded. George is sort of I don't know, just his friend, but his genuine friend who just sort of like they just literally drift from farm to farm. Right. It's all just set during this one job. But Lenny loves rabbits and animals and farm stuff, but he's so strong. There's just a scene where, like, if you give him a kitten, he's gonna fucking play too rough and kill that kitten.
Right. Okay.
But then he's heartbroken of it, and like you said, like he was hugging the baby too tight. Like he doesn't know his own strength. I think there's even like alpha. There's a wink of alpha, like a sort of. I guess it's not that big to you, like in the UK. I don't have much before. It's like a vegetable. I think that's that's what they're picking in of Mice and Men.
Okay.
It's just not, even without that, it's not subtle. The fact that he called him George, it's not a bad thing. I'm in no way am I saying it's a rip-off. It's like I'm gonna take a attempt at a sort of modern fable version of this. And I do really rate Blaze for that. I did find the climax pretty lackluster for me, if I'm honest.
Yeah, okay.
The whole pretty much once he leaves the apartment and goes on the run, it was just sort of, I don't know, like this close-in just felt slow when it didn't have to be. It was just like, okay, we got there at last. So just considering how emotional some of the middle and early book was, I found it a very unemotional climax ending.
Yeah,
which
fair
was
enough.
Sort of like, damn, they didn't save any of that sort of beautiful moments. I did.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. It didn't blow me away at ending in any way whatsoever. It was very sort of like, I think if
almost by the book. Really, I think it would, like you said, it was he's gonna die, and like 90% he's gonna die, or 10% he gets arrested, and a lot of it, I guess, was hanging on whether the baby dies. And I wonder, because we talked about, I need to do a Cujo spoiler for anyone who's read that, because the ending of Cujo goes there, and I wasn't too much of a fan of it. Do you think like this book could have thrown some surprises in for us? Do you think
Yeah,
if the kid would have died but Blaze got away, it would have been damn? Because
yeah,
I like him
yeah.
still?
No,
You know,
that's a good shout. Don't know how I'd feel about that one. I didn't think of that ending. For me, I imagined him getting caught, and
the chair. You're going to Shawshank.
yeah, no, now that was a good thing. They mentioned Shawshank in this, didn't they? I remember reading it and thinking, hang on a minute, how do people? Because I thought this was released back in the day when they were releasing Batman books.
Oh, you thought
Not
this was the
realised.
first mention?
Yeah, I was
Oh,
like,
I see.
how did they not realise it was Shawshank
No.
and it's Stephen King? But
And
no,
it's set
because
in Maine.
yeah, and it's
I don't
set
know
in Maine, so
where is
no,
it set? Is it set in Maine? I'm not sure. Huh? It feels
I guess.
very. I don't know. It doesn't feel like Maine. I've got to say if it is.
But yeah, the fact
Yeah,
that you mentioned
that's
Shawshank.
definitely his rewrites. I think just putting it into his universe.
Completely.
I think I can't remember, but there's a handful of like just small locations, you know, Shawshank and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, he'll come back to this character of Blaze again in a roundabout way. Well, not since 2007, but you know, The Stand has
MON.
Tom Cullen, who he's not particularly hulking, but he is described as bigger than everyone.
Yeah. I thought the film, the 1986 film, did a really good version of that character from The Stand.
Have you seen it recently?
Not the new series, no.
No, the old series.
No, not the TV miniseries, no.
That MOON is used a lot for a two-parter.
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah, like pretty much any scene he's in, he'll do it 3 times.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But no,
does he do it in the book? He
Yeah.
does do it in the book. Yeah. It's great.
I do love that 80s TV show. I've yet to see the new one. I've got it on my list. I just haven't got around to it.
Yeah, I haven't either.
I don't know. No one's really. I just think it made no waves. No one's talking about it in any way.
They would. I'm pretty sure that somewhere I read that they were possibly going to do a sequel or follow up or something, but I'm not sure.
Well, I don't know.
I know that it finished. It was the entire story was told in those episodes. So. But yeah, I really enjoyed Blaze. I thought it was very good. What I also really liked was there's a very small section in when he's met the girl, when he slept with the girl, you find out just briefly what happened to her and that she had a baby, and then that baby did really well and became a quarterback.
Was that his son?
Yeah, that was his son.
Oh,
I thought
okay.
That was really nice.
Yeah. I guess there's
very short. But it was really nice.
Yeah.
I'd like you said, the ending was a bit me. Not lackluster, but it just sort of whimpered out rather than went out the way that I told it. So basically, yeah, read the first 100 pages. Read the first 100 pages and then come and listen to this podcast for the good version of the ending.
I mean, I hope he finds more of these trunk novels, and I kind of want to read them more raw without his rewriting. If I'm honest, maybe they were a bit unreadable and far too raw, but I would have liked that 70s language, like I said earlier, that he feels doesn't fit anymore. You know,
it would be interesting to compare and contrast the unedited version versus this,
especially because for me, how much I love it. Hey, we're going to wrap it up around there. I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed. Join us again next episode, and until then, support your local bookstores and have a great day.